And if you haven't seen by the trend of this video, a lot of people are getting laid off, including people at Intel. Intel came out and quoted and saying by IGN, our revenues have not grown as expected, and we've yet to fully benefit from powerful trends like AI, he continued. Our costs are way too high, our margins are too low. We need bolder actions to address both practically given our financial results and outlook for the second half of 2024, which is tougher than previously expected. Okay, I had to double check because I thought it was 1,500 people laid off, which in itself would have been a lot for Intel. It's not 1,500. It's 15,000 people that are being laid off, and it's coming because of the low margins that Intel is incurring. In other words, the higher-ups would probably not been able to get the payout that they want, so they had to get rid of some people and some redundancies. These decisions have challenged me to my core, and this is the hardest thing I've done in my career. My pledge to you is that we will prioritize a culture of honesty, transparency, and respect in the weeks and months to come. And this comes from the CEO, quoted by IGN. Expect a lot more of these layoffs to happen. Unfortunately, the layoffs will continue, and they will continue to be great. I hope that the gaming industry was going to get a break with layoffs, but unfortunately, it seems like we're only getting started, and that's because almost, I don't know how many, I think it's like 50,000 people or more have been laid off in the industry. 359 people, let alone last month, have been laid off, and that's not even counting what happened today. It's an unfortunate thing that's going to happen, and hopefully things get better. So Game Informer has been in my life since I was about 12, 11 years old, and I still cherish what it felt like to open a Game Informer magazine. And unfortunately, IGN is reporting Game Informer has been closed down by GameStop, and the entire incredibly talented staff, including myself, have all been laid off. A frustrating turn of events, especially considering we were about 70% done with the next issue, and it was going to have a great cover. People on staff who don't know what's happening yet, there's a tweet that someone higher up posted spilling the news. I'll have some stuff later today. And yes, everyone at Game Informer was laid off about an hour ago. Game Informer was founded in August 1991, began publishing in Higher newsletter. GameStop took over Game Informer when it purchased FuncoLand in 2000, and it had become the longest running video game magazine in the world. In 2011, Game Informer was the third largest magazine in the US with over 8 million copies sold in the world. Game Informer's website has been around since 1996. Rest in peace, Game Informer. You gave me so many great memories that I will forever be grateful for, and I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for Game Informer inspiring me and showing me that it was possible to talk about games and people listen to you. Thank you for being one of the leaders in the revolution of taking gaming and nerdiness seriously, where we can all come together and talk about these things and have some fun. And now for our main story, Bungie, also known as a company that it resembles your father that never comes to visit you after he said he was gonna go get milk and always lets you down. What do you want me, Papa? So this is like the third time that I've covered Bungie in the last 5 or 6 months since I started this channel, and it's never good news whenever it is I have to cover Bungie, because the truth is, this is the biggest fuck-up company that I've ever seen in my life on this scale. Keep in mind that Bungie has one of the biggest free-to-play games on the planet that has microtransactions and that sells yearly expensive expansions that's as big and up there in the top 3 biggest MMOs, even up there with Warcraft. And for them to be announcing that they're laying off 17% of its workforce, which is 220 people that are going to be laid off, even after having a successful launch of Final Shape, their DLC, they still haven't managed their money properly to the point where they have to let go people or else they miss margins, aka there won't be enough money for the people on top in order to profit more. If it wasn't bad enough that people were getting laid off, when he decided to buy $2.3 million worth of classic cars while people were being laid off. Like, while I agree that a man should do whatever he wants with his money, There's also fucking timing, my guy. There's a time and a place for everything, and clearly, this wasn't the time for your classic-ass cars. Parsons was also quoted saying, "To refocus our studio and our business with more realistic goals and viable financials." Parsons also said cuts were made after exhausting all other mitigation options, although he failed to say what those options were. I'm pretty sure none of them were trying to take a pay cut from his pay, which we know that American companies don't do. The only company that does that in the gaming community is probably Nintendo when it comes to them losing money. Those guys would rather lose money than to cut any of their talent, and I think PlayStation is catching on to that talent's hard to come by, especially good talent that makes games in the top 3 MMOs like right now being played. So out of the 220 people that are being laid off, 155 roles of 12% Bungie's workforce into a parent company, Sony Interactive Entertainment, over the next few quarters. Parsons said this move saves a great deal of talent that would be otherwise have affected by the workforce in reduction. That suggests that if Sony hadn't taken on 155 roles, 375 staff would have been lost their jobs today, and that the actual reduction in Bungie's workforce over time will be substantially more than 17%. PlayStation will be taking about 70 of those developers and making a whole new studio with them to be able to create their own game, which is really cool that PlayStation is actually doing that. Not that they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart, they're doing it because they understand that talent is hard to come by. Bloomberg spoke to 10 current and former Bungie employees who asked not to be identified, and they described a company that grew too fast and tried to develop too many projects at once, spreading resources to thin rather than prioritizing its chief moneymaker, Destiny 2. And in further bad news, if you were expecting a Destiny 3 in the near future, maybe in next gen, well, Destiny 3 is not being developed on, and they are prioritizing making smaller patches to the game that will improve Destiny 2 overall, and they're also working on another unspecified game. It wasn't only Destiny 3 that suffered as a cancellation, but another game that was rumored to come out alongside Marathon was Payback, that was cancelled alongside with Destiny 3. Who knows, in the future these projects may come back, but which comes to the main part of the story, that PlayStation is taking over this entire company. The layoffs yesterday by Bungie CEO Pete Parsons, who said 220 workers would lose their jobs out of the workforce of about 1,300. Bungie is also working with parent company Sony to integrate 155 of our roles. So in other words, PlayStation is picking management roles that will be integrated into Bungie. Bungie will also spin out one of our incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new science fantasy universe, to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue its promising development. So some of the developers that I mentioned a little while ago that were 70 are working on this undisclosed sci-fi shooter. Now, PlayStation wasn't dumb when it purchased this company for $3.3 billion, which, yeah, a lot of people can argue that they overpaid quite a bit, but they wanted that talent. PlayStation isn't stupid. They know exactly what they did when they acquired this company. One of the things that PlayStation agreed with Bungie when they purchased Bungie is that if they didn't meet the required standards of what they said that they were going to deliver in terms of money and money made, that PlayStation could dissolve their entire board and insert their own board members, essentially controlling Bungie and PlayStation running the show instead of Pete Parsons, which at this point really is necessary. Pete Parsons has done this several times to the company. How can you have one of the biggest free-to-play shooters in the world that has people spending so much money be mismanaged to this point? To the point where A, they didn't listen to the Destiny players, which got them here in the first place. They focused on other projects that nobody really cared for or asked for. And now they're in the situation where PlayStation may have to take over and show them how to do finances. Bungie is seriously one of the most embarrassing fucking companies in the world, and it's not because of the people who work there, but because of the people who manage them, like Pete Parsons, who should step down. Apparently, if revenues goals are not met by too great an amount, then Sony holds the right to dissolve the current board structure and take complete control of the company. Bungie currently operates independent of Sony, but this would no longer be the case if Sony fully takes over, and Bungie bosses are said to be fearful of that happening, given Destiny 2 DLC received a 4-month delay. IGN has told Bungie is already struggling to meet the necessary targets to keep its last vestige of freedom. In other words, the takeover is coming, it's going to happen. The only question is, will PlayStation manage this company better than Pete Parsons did? While PlayStation has a really good track record, better than most people in the industry, of managing their companies and kind of managing their companies to put out games that sell a lot and that people love and that get awards. But can they do that to a company that they're not very familiar with when it comes to online playing, which is one of the biggest weaknesses that PlayStation has? One of the strengths that PlayStation has, though, is listening to its developers. So hopefully PlayStation listens to the developers when it comes to them wanting to focus on Destiny and things that players actually want. Thank you for watching. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. And if you watch it all the way through, put a D in the comment for Destiny and put a rest in peace on the side, because, their freedom is completely gone. And remember, you're pretty good.